Teams are apparently weary about the Florida Panthers ahead of the trade deadline, and the Panthers make a visit to the White House ahead of their game against the Caps.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Tuesday, February 4th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez, and you can follow me on X and Blue Sky at MondoMan12. Follow the show account on X and Instagram at L_FLA Panthers, and on Blue Sky at LOFLA Panthers. You can follow the podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. And if you're watching on the YouTube, make sure to press that like button. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here, and new customers can bet just $5 and you'll win up to $200 in bonus bets. Download the app and head to FanDuel.com to get started. So, Florida Panther fans, grateful to be back here once again on the show to discuss everything in the world of the Florida Panthers. Today, we are going to talk about the salary cap projections that the NHL released last week. The league is apparently weary about the Florida Panthers and what they'll do at the trade deadline. And the Panthers, they visit the Washington Capitals on Tuesday to start a quick 2-game road trip and made a visit to the White House. We'll discuss that one in segment number 3 for the show. But let's start with the salary cap projections for the NHL and what was released via a memo on Friday. It's funny because sometimes with these announcements for the leagues when it comes to certain things and then us recording and then going into a weekend, which when we recorded Monday's show, we wanted to really focus on the back-to-back for the Panthers, as there were so many things to discuss for the Panthers. So, of course, with an off day for the Cats here, wanted to go more into a deeper dive breakdown for what this could mean for the Panthers. So the memo for that the NHL release is what the possible ceilings could be in the next 3 seasons for the NHL. So the 2025-26 season, the ceiling for the NHL is going to be $95.5 million for them. The next year, there's a possibility that the cap could be up to $104 million. And then the very next year after that, it could be $113.5 million. And with a Canadian TV deal upcoming, next CBA negotiations are going to happen, which is going to be Gary Bettman's last. And there's a question that on a few national shows that we heard, that I personally heard today, like The Sheet and The Athletic, that we're talking about, are other ownership groups, and especially small markets, going to have their own internal cap with the league being so gate driven? And thankfully, in the world of the Florida Panthers, where Vinny Viola invests so much money in different things and has other various different interests, especially one that really stands out to me. Every May, he's involved in the Kentucky Derby, so that's another thing for him, of what he's involved with. And the fact that his debts are paid off, he doesn't have to. We don't see a scenario in the future for this ownership group for the Panthers in having to sell an ownership stake in order to pay off some of the debts, which we see owners do over and over again. There's actually a situation going on with the Pittsburgh Penguins right now where they're trying to sell a share of their organization, with the Penguins sellout streak coming to an end, and then the team being in a little bit of purgatory for them. So that is when you look at the financials for the Panthers and how they are putting that money to invest in what's going on around the arena, which we've already seen with the Den of Honor converted into the Jameson Crossbar, which obviously is another revenue stream for the team. That's another addition for the Panthers in order for them to continue to spend to the cap, not only on the ice, but off the ice. But, this conversation here on the show is about what's going to happen on the ice. So we're going to talk a little bit short term right now about where the Panthers stand. 9 forwards in their contract, 4 defensemen, 2 goalies, 7 open roster spots for the Panthers, $23 million in cap space for them. If with the cap being 95.5. So that would mean 72 million, 72.5 million of dollars committed to them, with 3 RFAs for the Panthers in Jesper Boquist, Mackie Samoskevich, and Tobias Bjornfot for them. And then the 4 UFAs for the Panthers: Sam Bennett, Aaron Ekblad, Nate Schmidt, and Tomas Nosek. Just like Oliver Ekman-Larsson last year for the Panthers, this was going to be a 1-year deal for Nate Schmidt and Tomas Nosek as far as upping up their stock and then possibly getting deals elsewhere. So that's where I think the situation for those two this year for the Panthers, they are the version of Oliver Ekman-Larsson for the Panthers. And let's also discuss one thing as far as what has happened in the NHL, getting a TV deal, at least in the US, of multiple networks in order to compete with each other, which we discussed. This, it's been a while since I've discussed this point on the show. When they locked in their long-term deal with NBC, that held the NHL back for many years, especially when you had Stanley Cup final games on NBCSN instead of a national affiliate in NBC. That hurt the NHL's ability to grow their product. So now that has been for the last 3 seasons for the NHL, getting the US TV deal with Disney and Turner Sports for them, that has definitely been a big up as far as the media deal. Although, once again, gate-driven revenue is still the key in the NHL for what brings money for the entirety of the league. So now that we know a number for what's going to happen for the cap for them, number one, 2026 is going to be a big offseason of spending for the Panthers. So expect them to continue to spend up to the cap while they have this core locked together for 2030. A lot of people are worried about the Canadian teams on what they would spend as far as US dollars, because the cap is of US dollars for them, and also small market teams of if they're able to catch up for them. So that's another factor for the NHL here. But short term for the Panthers here, I put out a poll on X talking about what should they do if they with Ekblad and or Sam Bennett. Sign both, sign Bennett only, sign Ekblad only, or let both of them walk. 68% of you guys said sign both. 21% said sign Ekblad only. 7% say Bennett only, and then the rest say let both walk. So, which was the answer that I was expecting the least amount for that one. So you're going to get one of them, just like last year, how the Panthers were going to prioritize one of Gustav Forsling or Brandon Montour, not both. It was going to be hard for them to get both. And once again, I do stand on this that I would not give Aaron Ekblad full term on his deal. And honestly, I wouldn't even do the same thing for Sam Bennett for him neither. Based on the lack of production, we've seen Anton Lundell graduate into the role of 2C for him. But also, and here's the thing: if the market value for Sam Bennett isn't $8 million and you could get him in the $6 million range for them, you could fit him, Aaron Ekblad at $7 million, Mackie Samoskevich, who's probably going to get a bridge deal, which we'll discuss more in the next segment, and Jesper Boquist, who's that other RFA on the Panthers, who I want to see a little bit of an extension. If you were to get 2.5 Jesper, $3 million for Mackie on a bridge deal, $7 million for Ekblad, and then Sam Bennett at 6, the math works for $4 million for 4 more minimum contracts for the Panthers. And you'll see possibly an ELC, a player on their ELC come up, maybe a Justin Sordiff, maybe a Jack Devine, Grayson Sachin. If he's ready, I doubt it that he'll be ready. He'll probably spend a year in the AHL. If Sandis Vilmanis is ready, maybe he's probably be on the team. There's so much you could squeeze out of the toothpaste for the Panthers here. That's the thing about squeezing the toothpaste here. And it's going to be really tough in the short term for the Panthers if they do end up signing all of those guys to a deal. But the thing is, other teams going around who are looking at the Panthers' success want a little bit of a piece of that. We saw that when the Seattle Kraken signed Brandon Montour to his deal, at which the Panthers were never going to sign that deal for him. So what is Bennett's market going to be? Is he an $8 million player in another market? And then considering the tax situation in different places outside of the state of Florida, will they actually give him that money that he would command there if he does in fact command it? So my friend of the show, Jackson Holzer, also was one to reply saying that he thinks that Bennett will price himself out. I think Ekblad will test the market and then eventually come back to Florida and say, hey, this is what we got. This is a little bit of a deal that we could sprinkle in for you here to help you stay here, and then have you not necessarily retire Panther, but at least be here in the short term for him, which again, I wouldn't give him long term, but I would still. But if you're talking about a rise in the cap around the same range that Ekblad is making right now, that contract could possibly be worth it. And we've seen once again how valuable Ekblad is, when he's out of the lineup. And listen, next year could be a gap year for the Panthers. I hate to say it, but based on how squeezed the Panthers would be, and 2026 with a whole bunch of money coming off the books of Bobrovsky and Spencer Knight on a new deal, which he won't make nearly as much as Bob. I think if you sign Mackey, Jesper, and Ekblad, it could be short-term pain for long-term gain for the Panthers here. So that's another thing for what the Panthers could possibly do next year and then beyond after that. But in segment number 2, we are going to discuss more about what direction Mackie Samoskevich can't possibly goes. And could there be a Bennett replacement if the Panthers do decide to go in a different direction? We're going to discuss that more next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. And Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, two teams, endless possibilities. There's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Just bet $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, the official partner of Super Bowl 59. Thank you guys once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Tuesday. So want to continue the discussion of Mackie Samoskevich, and it's going to be interesting to see where Mackie's camp go, because there's no one under the current Panthers roster who has the same representation as Mackie Samoskevich. Pat Brisson is Mackie's agent. When I say current roster, Pat Brisson is also Grayson Sachin's agent. So Pat Brisson is the agent of Nathan MacKinnon, Elias Pettersson, and John Tavares. And Brisson has also gotten bridge deals to guys like Dawson Mercer, Pettersson, and Zegras, which we've seen the injury issues and the fit issues that Zegras has also had for him on the Anaheim Ducks. So, and he's making just south of $6 million for him. So, but also there's also been different deals that he's been able to get, like Matty Bernier's on a long-term deal for him. So that's going to be interesting to see where Mackie Samoskevich commands. And honestly, with the cap going up, if you're Mackie's camp, you kind of want that bridge deal if you're him. But if you're on the Panther side of things, if you're Bill Zito, you want possibly an 8-year deal for him, kind of like what you did with Anton Lundell, getting him paying him $5 million for 6 years. And this is something that when I joined Panther Puri at the time of the contract, they said it best. In the first year, you're kind of about paying a third line center $5 million. But then the graduation for Anton Lundell being a second line center, you're seeing a possible bargain for that. So Bill Zito, I think the quest for him would be to sign Mackie Samoskevich as for long term. And here's the thing: 32 Thoughts spoke about Florida, about the Panthers, and this is the quote, and discuss about teams being wary of them. And here's the quote: Teams are wary of Florida. They don't have a lot of things to trade, but teams think they are going to surprise us all. Like Bill Zito is going to pull something out of his hat. They are hard after a right shot defenseman. Close quote. And we've seen first round picks go like crazy over the weekend, like for JT Miller and then Mikael Granlund, which looking back at the first round pick that the Canucks traded to get Marcus Pettersson, it's top 14 protected for this year. And then it becomes unprotected next year from the New York Rangers. And right now, the Rangers are projected to have the 12th pick. So the real winner could be Kyle Dubas in him attempting to rebuild the Pittsburgh Penguins here. And this is something that Greg Wyshynski and Jeff Merrick spoke about on the sheet there. And the perspective around this draft class when it comes to first round picks is it's not a strong one. Thing is, Panthers don't have a first round pick until 2026. So that's another thing. David Savard nor Henry Yokiharu, they don't have any clauses in their contracts as far as UFAs. So as far as pulling something out of his hat, I'm looking at those. I'm like, that doesn't look like the rabbit out of the hat as far as Panthers retaining 25% while in a trade, other teams keep 50 or you get a broker in a kind of deal for that. And if you're looking at possible replacements for Sam Bennett of guys who are possibly under contract beyond this year about pulling something out of the hat, because listen, Mikko Rantanen got traded. We saw Wayne Gretzky get traded in the late 80s, so nothing is off the table for what the Panthers could do here. But at the same time, he won a cup and it's recent. So again, those chances could be very low for the Panthers of doing any of that. But never say never for the Panthers. Noah Dobson is an RFA, but something that would be a haul of picks that the Panthers would have to give up for Noah Dobson as far as a right-handed shot for them. But also with the state of the cap, what are the chances of them getting someone under contract for them? Which Casey Middlestat is someone who the Panthers could replace at center for them, but behind Anton Lundell as the 3C, and he'll have 2 years left on the contract. But also for the defense core for the Panthers, the Calgary Flames did speak. Craig Conroy spoke about how a few players are off the table. Mackenzie Weegar, Nazem Kadri, and Rasmus Anderson. After this year, Rasmus Anderson has 1 year left on his deal, and he has a 6-team no trade for him. So what are the chances that Bill Zito pulls something like this for trading for someone like Rasmus Anderson? But it would come at a cost for Bill Zito, because Rasmus Anderson is seen as someone valuable for the Calgary Flames. And also, once the ink was dry on the Kadri and Huberdeau deals for the Flames, they can't go scorched earth rebuild. They have to try to do this on the fly. And then the trades of Joel Farabee and Noah Cates for them not Noah Cates, Morgan Frost, excuse me. It not only is a reset for both of them, but it's telling the Calgary Flames that we believe that the front office believes in the group, and that the next stage of them trying to build something there with a stud goaltender and Dustin Wolf there, that is also speaks to a little bit of what they're trying to do as far as continuing to try to still stay afloat in the Western Conference. As far as Western Conference teams, Calgary is a great story this season for them. And also, Jonathan Huberdeau just scored goal number 20 this season. So fine, and great to see that he has also found his groove. But still, when it comes to the Panthers and their chances of getting someone past this year and not just the rental, there could be that possibility of them going after someone. So the rabbit out of the hat for the Panthers could be something like this. But at the same time, the other guys that I named, that is going to be a little difficult as far as the rabbit pulling out of the hat, because the players don't have the control. It's up to the front offices, and it's going to be interesting to see because I don't know if the front offices across the league are going to try to do the Panthers any favors because they've seen how Bill Zito has burned other teams over trades recently. Sam Bennett, Brandon Montour for them, and also Sam Reinhart. Even I know Devin Levi is still a prized prospect that the Buffalo Sabres are trying to develop there, but that's another thing that still the Bill Zito has found a way to create bargains out of out of not giving up a lot, and also different guys have continuously forced trades out of their situations. Claude Giroux for them, Vladimir Tarasenko recently for him, but it just depends what the Panthers are willing to offer, and they don't once again they don't have a lot, just under 3 million in cap space. It 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 might be a situation now where GMs are gonna try to avoid trading to the Panthers because, and also it's the fact is they don't have the best packages neither. So GMs are also going to do what's best for them and their organization. It's not always going to be about, oh, did they burn they're gonna think to themselves about what Bill Zito has done, but also they're gonna try to, for the selling teams, which there's not a lot of. There's, especially in the Eastern Conference, which is so condensed. Not everyone's a seller just yet, with it being a month away. So it's still there's still a little bit of time to determine who is in fact going to be one of those teams that sell, in fact do sell. So we still got to see this play out over the next few weeks to see who will actually punt on the season for them and actually commit to a trade for them. But we're going to transition over to segment number 3, where the Panthers paid a visit to the White House and also preview tonight's game between the Florida Panthers and the Washington Capitals. We're going to discuss that next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Third and final segment here on this Tuesday, February 4th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So the Florida Panthers paid a visit to the White House, a tradition for championship teams to visit the White House after they win. Recent champions of the Vegas Golden Knights and the Tampa Bay Lightning also paid visits to the venue as well. Showed up with their championship rings and greeted the president on the East Wing, and then took pictures on the stage. Also took pictures later in the Oval Office as the president told the story of the Panthers this season. Joined by Vinny Viola and staff, Alexander Barkov and Matthew Tkachuk took center stage along with the POTUS to say some words to him. And also, great to see Kyle Okposo join the team. I hope that he is enjoying his retirement there. So great once again to see Kyle Okposo there reuniting with the team. Sad that Ulrich Larson, Stephen Lawrence, Anthony Stolars, Ryan Lomberg, and Brandon Montour, unfortunately, they are no longer with the team, so they didn't get the opportunity to be with the team for them. And yes, the Stanley Cup was present for the ceremony there at the White House. And just as championship teams do, presented the president with a jersey with the number of their personal number for which president they are, and the gold hockey stick for him there. So yeah, and the White House band played "We Are the Champions" as the Panthers approached the stage, and also they took the time to learn the Panthers goal song, and something that Jameson Olive of FloridaPanthers.com tweeted. So I thought that was a little bit of a cool feature for that as the Panthers paid a visit there for them. But the Panthers now have to shift their focus to their game on Tuesday night against the Washington Capitals, where the Panthers did no favors for Spencer Knight in their game in late November, where it was a 2-1 game late in the third period before 2 empty net goals. The 1-1 after 2, where South Florida native Jacob Chikrin scored less than 2 minutes in. very tight playoff type of game for the Washington Capitals, where neither team had 20 shots going into the third period for them. And this was in the middle of the Panthers losing 6 of 7, and then responded with, after that loss, winning 6 of 7 of their own. And things even out for the most part for them on the winning 6 of 7. And we even spoke about the teetering and tottering of the Panthers in January. And it's crazy. The Panthers have an opportunity to build on their current winning streak, which is currently at 3, their longest winning streak since before the Christmas break, since when they lost to the Tampa Bay Lightning on the night of the neon knee. Which, once again, that game, when we spoke about with Alex Krechuk of Lemon City Live, we spoke about how the Panthers that night where it was so focused on the rough play and everything that happened after that you almost forgot that the score was 3-0 at the time, when the Panthers winning streak came to an end. And Panthers have thankfully created a little bit of cushion with a 7-game winning streak that was carried on from the New York trip to the Global Series, and then coming in back from with wearing their bathrobes as they were entered the arena after the Global Series there. So the longest losing streak happened to be when they faced and it ended when they faced the Capitals in late November. Alex Ovechkin-less Capitals team at the time, where he was out due to injury after the fracture in his leg. And now he's 18 goals away from breaking Wayne Gretzky's record, which could be broken on the Panthers' next visit to DC on March 22nd. So something to monitor as the Washington Capitals are top of not only the Metropolitan Division but the Eastern Conference. They are top 2 in goals for and against. And the story outside of Alexander Ovechkin is the story of Logan Thompson. Requested a trade out of Vegas and was found out about it while signing autographs during the draft at Sphere. So responded with a .924 save percentage and getting rewarded with a contract extension at 27 with a cap hit just under $6 million. And to think that Logan Thompson was also in the Calder conversation just a few years ago for him. And the cap hit that Logan Thompson is at, that looks like to be a little bit of a sweet spot now for goaltenders who aren't at the top level, but will do just enough. And the rumor is Chris Patrick, GM of the Washington Capitals, who took over for Brian McClellan, is also looking to extend Charlie Lindgren, who we saw him recently play in a Calder Cup final for him against Alex Lyon. When he was with the Chicago Wolves against the Springfield Thunderbirds. So that also creates a lot of flexibility for the Washington Capitals to build around Ovechkin for next year and even post Ovechkin after he breaks the record. And just like how Carolina's deals in the offseason are mostly guys in their 30s expiring, it's the same thing with the Caps. TJ Oshie probably won't play again. Nicholas Backstrom's deal comes off the books, even though they're both on LTIR. They got salary cap relief after Evgeny Kuznetsov contract was terminated, and you still have guys under contract who bring a lot of sandpaper, like the power forward of Tom Wilson, and then recently drafted Connor McMichael, who's also performed well. PLD Pierre-Luc Dubois has also found a great situation in Washington there, and where the Washington Capitals are with multiple points up on the Florida Panthers with 2 games in hand. Going to look up their exact points that they have right now. 75 points with 52 games played, while the Panthers have 67 points with 54 games. So the chase for the top of the Eastern Conference doesn't look like the Panthers are going to get there, but the focus still for the Panthers here is to still at least get to the top of the Atlantic Division, which they still hold as of right now, with the Leafs having 2 games in hand, which both teams will be in action on Tuesday night, as the Leafs are currently on a West Coast swing for them, which they beat Edmonton, who Edmonton almost had a comeback on Saturday on Hockey Night in Canada, which they will end that road trip on this Saturday against the Vancouver Canucks, which don't blink now though. The current playoff bracket for the Eastern Conference has Florida versus Tampa Bay, if you're looking at points percentage, and Toronto against the Ottawa Senators. Battle of Ontario and a Battle of Florida as of right now for what the playoff picture looks like in the Eastern Conference for that. So that's going to be that. Hey, I hope it stays that way based on what the amount of the rivalries for that. And hey, the NHL got what they wanted as far as when they set up these divisions, which Marc-Andre Fleury and Matt Zuccarello recently spoke on 32 Thoughts about them wanting to go back to 1 versus 8 for the Eastern Conference. But based on this, from what we're seeing in the standings, that looks like a really fun first round for both sides of the Atlantic Division right now, which the Panthers will see these Ottawa Senators later on this week at home right before the Four Nations break. So that is definitely going to see. It's definitely gonna. We're definitely going to see how playoff ready the Ottawa Senators actually are. Which, again, in our Atlantic Division Roundtable show, I was one of the few that said that I think that Ottawa, of the 3 teams of Detroit, Buffalo, and 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 Ottawa, that they were going to be that team to officially break through after the offseason moves for them. So definitely going to be a fun chase for the playoffs coming up, as after the Four Nations, 25 games left for the Panthers after that, and still rolling along as the Panthers are hoping to still create more, pad more of the points there with just 3 games left right before a huge break, with the exception of 8 players. But that's going to do it for today's edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Come back tomorrow on the show, and we will be recapping the Panthers' game against the Washington Capitals in the second of 3 matchups between the 2 teams, as Tuesday night's matchup is a battle of 2 of the top teams in the Eastern Conference. But in the meantime, if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Flip Livingstone and Steel Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez, signing off. And you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're your team every day.